January 9th, 2003, 18 years ago, a young boy named Ricardo Pepe was born in El Paso, Texas, and who would have known then that 18 years later the Pepi train would be rolling into San Pedro Sula to save the opening round of World Cup qualification for the U.S., delivering 5 points in a window that looked as about dark and dismal as we've ever seen. At halftime, the U.S. was struggling. The U.S. was looking for answers, and then in the second half, we end up with one of the biggest blowouts away in World Cup qualifying that we've seen in quite some time. The enthusiasm is back in the team. People are excited again. At least right now, the ship has been saved, and at least for right now, Greg Berhalter has found a way to keep himself off the hot seat, at least heading into the next World Cup qualifying window in October. So how did they manage to do it? How did they manage to blow out this Honduran team despite having one of the roughest first halves I can recall from the U.S. men's national team? All that and more on this episode of The Yank Report. What's up? My name is Sam. Welcome to The Yank Report, the show where we talk about the U.S. men's national team. If you want to support the channel, the best way to do so is click the like button. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. Now let's check out the opening lineups, and the U.S. came out in a wild opening lineup with Matt Turner as the keeper, Tyler Adams as the right wing back, three center backs of Miles Robinson, John Brooks, and Mark McKenzie, George Bello as the left wing back, James Sands and Kellen Acosta as the two defensive midfielders, and Josh Sargent, Ricardo Pepe, and Christian Pulisic up top. Now, I know prior to this World Cup qualifying window, I was calling for the 3-4-2-1 formation, and I thought that it would really work for the U.S. And at least with this group of players, a lot of them seeing their first action of the tournament, a lot of them very young, it did not come out great. It was a bit disjointed. Honduras, for their part, lined up in a classic 4-4-2, and away we go. So we have Bello and Sands getting their first starts of the qualifying window, and I believe their first starts for like the senior national team, their first World Cup qualifying starts. Pressure-packed situation for them, not only starting away in Honduras, but also, you know, if you think about the situation the U.S. is in, where they are desperate for this win, desperate for 3 points. World Cup qualifying is on the line. The fan base is down their throats, and realistically, their coach's job is on the line. So that's a pressure-packed situation to come in for your first like meaningful cap in your first World Cup qualifying cap. We also had Ricardo Pepe in the same situation, getting his first start for the U.S. national team, period. So that is a wild situation for an 18-year-old to be in. And we also had Josh Sargent starting on the right wing. He's been seeing some time there for his club with Norwich. He played there a little bit for Werder Bremen in the preseason, but it's still the first time we've seen him do this job for the U.S. men's national team. The first play that I clocked was 2 minutes in. Pulisic wins the ball back and attacks the left flank from midfield. Josh Sargent makes a run into the channel. Pulisic plays through for Sargent, but the ball is intercepted by a Honduran defender. Tyler Adams had made himself available with a long run into the box. Now, I bring up this play. It was kind of a nothing play, but I bring it up only to say that a few seconds later, whenever Honduras counterattacked, Tyler Adams had sprinted and tracked all the way back to end the Honduran counter with a tackle. There was questions coming into this game with Tyler Adams starting. He has started the 2 previous games and went 90 minutes. Does he have the fuel left in the tank to come for this Honduras game? Is there going to be anything left with Tyler Adams? And he pretty much answered all the questions right there. Tyler Adams was one of the best players in this entire qualifying window. As far as I'm concerned, put the captain's armband on him right now and don't take it off, because that is our captain. That guy is, he brings it every single game. No matter what position on the field he's playing in, he is the best player at that position. At around the 8:28 mark, off a Honduran free kick, Honduras finds the ball in the box in the right channel. James Sands defends but allows a Honduran attacker to turn in the box, and he flashes across in front of Turner's goal. Let me interrupt the video for 1 second to tell you guys about today's sponsor, and that is OneFootball. OneFootball is the soccer app that is perfect for any soccer fan out there, especially during World Cup qualifying, because we're playing so many different teams that are rotating and there's a ton of different players on the field. In the OneFootball app, you can get all the information on game day that you need, including kickoff times and locations and all that, but you can also see the lineups both for the US and for the opposition. You can kind of look through the players. If there's a player you find interesting on the opposition, you can go ahead and follow them, so you can kind of follow their career and see what they're all about, get familiar with the names on the field, field, all that good stuff. See where the players in the opposition play. It's perfect for that. It's like a program right in your phone for whenever the U.S. is playing in these qualifier games all over Central America. For a free download of the OneFootball app, click the link in the description. Not only will you be getting the latest news and information about your favorite teams and players and the game that you love, but you will also be supporting the Yank Report directly, and you will be supporting a company that supports content creators for U.S. soccer like me. So thank you to OneFootball, and let's get back to the video. A dangerous opportunity here for Honduras. Nobody made a run from Honduras to put this away. It would have been a tap-in. Then again, nobody from the U.S. really made a play on it either. In the end, it kind of falls harmlessly across the box, but it just shows that Honduras is coming out to play. They have the ability to get the ball in the box, and whenever they do, they're being extremely dangerous and pouring numbers in. An early warning sign from Honduras. At 90:44, a Honduras attacker wins a ball floated into the U.S. box against John Brooks. Brooks allows the Honduran to bring the ball down and flick it backwards, where it eventually finds an oncoming Honduran attacker for a shot. The shot is harmlessly deflected wide. Another moment where Honduras finds themselves in the U.S. box with the ball and they're able to bring it down. The first time was that turn against James Sands. This time, it was a tough display of defending from John Brooks. He allows the Honduran attacker to not only win the header, but bring the ball down in the box and redirect it into the pathway of one of the attacking players for Honduras. An early warning sign that maybe John Brooks is just not up for this game for whatever reason, defending-wise. I expected a lot more from John Brooks, especially in this moment where this is supposed to be kind of his bread and butter, like really defending heads up in tight areas and anticipating plays, and it just wasn't it from John Brooks in this moment. At the 15:23 mark, immediately after a U.S. counter, Honduras collects the ball and counters themselves. James Sands attempts to apply pressure to the ball carrier, but goes down, leaving the U.S. backline exposed. John Brooks starts to step to the ball carrier, but is caught in two minds and the ball is played in behind. Miles Robinson pressures the Honduran attacker in the box and forces a shot wide to the near side. Another moment where two defenders for the U.S. once again have some tough moments in James Sands and John Brooks. James Sands gets caught upfield, and in that moment you either get the ball or you foul the player. There's no in between, and whenever he goes down, he just leaves the U.S. backline fully exposed. Another moment where we can see John Brooks playing in the middle of that back three, and it's a system, at least for the U.S., where they don't have a lot of time and experience being drilled in, and you could tell that John Brooks was kind of uncomfortable in that role the whole game. He wasn't sure when to step or what to do in that moment, and in this moment he gets caught in no man's land between the lines, and he gets exposed. Luckily, Miles Robinson was there to step to the player that the Honduran attacker played it into the box and kind of forced him wide and forced him into a difficult shot. At 18:50, we get the first dangerous moment from the U.S. in attack. Kellen Acosta picks up the ball 10 yards outside the Honduran box in the left channel and plays across into the penalty spot. Both Pulisic and Sargent are in behind, but the service is just a bit too high for Pulisic and the ball falls harmlessly out of bounds. This was the first moment that the U.S. really found a player in the channel and was willing to put in a cross, and you could see right away that crosses were going to be difficult for the Hondurans to deal with in this game for whatever reason, that this was going to be an opportunity for the U.S. to exploit moving forward. In this moment, it looked like Christian Pulisic was a bit offsides, but of course there's no VAR in World Cup qualifying for CONCACAF, so it wouldn't have mattered anyway. Pulisic's not able to get his head to it, and for whatever reason, Josh Sargent didn't really attack it, but it was that first clean moment on goal for the U.S., and it could have been 1-0 right there if Pulisic's able to make contact with it. In the 24th minute, off a U.S. build-up move, George Bello finds the ball on the left flank and sends a cross to the back post. Sargent heads the ball back across goal to the top of the 6-yard box. Pepi creates some space for himself and attempts an acrobatic volley, but fails to make a good connection. The ball floats over the bar. Another one of these situations where the U.S. finds that ball in the same area where they're like 10 yards off the box in the channel. This time it's George Bello, and he puts a cross into the back post. Great cross from George Bello. Sargent is able to redirect it with his head to Pepi. Pepi does this thing whenever he's in the box where he's just able to create space for himself, and it's not something I see from the other U.S. forwards. Like, I never see Josh Sargent do this. I rarely see Jordan Pefok do it either, where it's just like if you watch American football, it's like a receiver just kind of pushing off his defender to create some space for himself to catch the ball. Ricardo sort of pushes off the defender and just creates that yard of space necessary to get his foot to the ball. Unfortunately, it would have been a really difficult finish. It was a ball that was bouncing above his waist, so he tried to get over on it, but he just got under it and kind of let it float harmlessly over the bar. But another moment of danger from the U.S. and another moment that's created from a cross into the box. A few minutes after that, we get the Honduran goal sequence. After a long sequence of possession from Honduras, where they work it from the left side to the right side, back up to the top, Honduras plays a penetrating ball between the lines to a U.S. attacking midfielder. In this three-in-the-back formation, the U.S. really struggled to be compact throughout the game. There was space either in between the midfield line and the forward line, or there was space between the midfield line and the defending line. And in this situation, there was a ton of space between the midfielders and the defenders, and a Honduran floats into that space and a ball gets played into him. John Brooks steps and attempts to pressure, but the Honduran is able to turn and play a ball into space on the right flank. A Honduran attacker had gotten the better of Tyler Adams and was free on that flank, and he plays a ball across the 6-yard box, finding a free runner in the middle who's able to finish 1-0 Honduras. George Bello's getting a lot of blame on this play because he let his runner go by, didn't pick up the runner in that position. And another instance where, George Bello, it wasn't it from George Bello. George Bello had kind of a so-so game. I think later on in the half, he was really nervous in possession to play the ball forward. There was a lot of instances where like a counter was on, but he just kind of tightened up and decided to play backwards, which is not something we're used to seeing from George Bello at Atlanta United. Usually he's a pretty competent player with the ball at his feet in making penetrating dribbles and attacking and being fluid in the attack, but we didn't see it from George Bello here. Not saying that we'll never see it from him in the future. This is his first World Cup qualifier after all, but in this particular game, we didn't see it from George Bello. Another moment where John Brooks is just not the John Brooks of old, where we didn't see him just have an authoritative moment in defense there. He allows the player to turn and find that space and create that opportunity for the goal. Another moment where we see John Brooks just not really sure kind of whether to stay or where to go, kind of gets caught out. Just a tough moment all the way around for the U.S. defense and backline and midfield right here. Almost immediately after getting a 1-goal lead, the Honduras players start time wasting. They're going down. They're making the most out of every opportunity to hit the deck, lay down, wait for the stretcher, all that good stuff, all the best stuff that CONCACAF has to offer. In the 32nd minute, Andy Najar gets a ball on the Honduran right flank and plays an early cross to the U.S. box. A Honduran attacker dummies it, allowing it to roll through for another Honduran attacker to collect, line up a curling effort that is just far of the far post, but is not too far away. Another really dangerous moment for Honduras. And at this point in the game, Honduras is pretty much having their way with the U.S. defense. They're maintaining possession. They're creating space. And the U.S. defense just looks completely disjointed. There's tons of space in between the lines. Players don't really know what to do in certain situations. Really lackadaisical effort in defense, and things are not looking good heading into halftime. Speaking of halftime, at halftime we go to the CBS broadcast booth with Oguchi Onyewu, Clint Dempsey, and Charlie Davies, and I've been enjoying watching those guys. I think that they've been fairly candid, about as candid as you can ask for TV presenters to be, and at halftime they were not pulling punches. They were ripping this U.S. Team. They were ripping Greg Berhalter. They were calling for changes right and left. Clint Dempsey even said that he's got a good 15 minutes in him. He can get in there and at least create some opportunities and get some shots on goal. It was dark. It was not looking good for the U.S. And credit to Greg Berhalter, who in the previous video we absolutely ripped for waiting so long to make substitutions. In this game, he doesn't wait. He makes the changes right at halftime. He switches from a back three to a back four, and he brings on Anthony Robinson for Bello, Brendan Aronson for Josh Sargent, and Sebastian Lletget for John Brooks. Now, that's probably the big one, Lletget for Brooks, because Brooks coming into this World Cup qualifying window was supposed to be not only our best center back, but one of the best players on the squad, one of the few guys in the starting 11 with World Cup experience, and a player that we were supposed to be able to rely on. And in the last two games, whenever John Brooks played, he has not looked good. He has not looked like that dominant center back that we saw maybe a couple years ago in the Copa America tournament. He's looked slow. He's looked disinterested, and he hasn't been that dominant defender in the air. He hasn't offered us a whole lot in possession. If you remember back in the Nations League, it was John Brooks that played in that ball to, I believe, Weston McKennie, who headed it to PFOC, who actually put the U.S. ahead against Honduras. We haven't seen that in the 2 games against Canada and Honduras, with John Brooks just not playing quality balls all over the field. Just not getting a lot from John Brooks, and that is a concern moving forward. However, with the way that Miles Robinson has stepped up, that's been great for the U.S. But all that aside, John Brooks comes out. Sebastian Lletget goes in. The U.S. switches back to that 4-3-3, and away we go into the second half. In the 47th minute, almost immediately after halftime, the U.S. get their first goal sequence. After a clearance, I believe, from Mark McKenzie in the box, Ricardo Pepe holds the ball up well for Christian Pulisic. I love me some good hold-up play, and this was great from Ricardo Pepe, being strong. Pulisic then charges at the Honduran back line with runners available in front of him. He plays out wide to Sebastian Lletget. Lletget then fires across into the back post. Pepi challenges for the ball with a Honduran center back. The ball squirts out to Antonee Robinson, who is able to finish. Goal, USA 1-1. Antonee Robinson does a backflip. Now let's talk about Antonee Robinson, because coming into this World Cup qualifying window, I've been pretty critical of Antonee Robinson because up to this point, we haven't seen a great game from Antonee Robinson. We've been hearing so much about how well he's played for Fulham in the Premier League and then in the Championship, but whenever it comes to the U.S. men's national team, especially whenever we're playing in possession and he's asked to short pass and stuff like that, it just hasn't been good from Antonee Robinson, not in attack or in defense. And in the Canada game, he was tremendous. And in this game, he was one of the best players on the field. A fantastic game from Antonee Robinson, not just in the attack, where he was one of the most important attackers on the field for U.S., again and again and again, terrorizing that left flank, but also in defense, where he was one of the few players on the field who could stop Andy Nahar head up. And Nahar was tearing us up. And there's a moment a few minutes later where Nahar just kind of has an and one mixtape moment against Brendan Aronson, but he wasn't getting that joy against Antonee Robinson. Antonee Robinson, fantastic window, and at this moment, I'm very comfortable with him starting as the left back in either a 4-back formation or a 3-back formation for the U.S. In the 52nd minute, the U.S. is in possession in the Honduran half. Tyler Adams switches to Antonee Robinson on the left. Robinson plays to Aronson in the middle of the field. Aronson plays it to Lletget at the top of the box, who finds Pulisic out wide in space. Pulisic takes a touch and fires a shot low to the far post. An outstretched hand from the diving Honduran keeper keeps the shot out of the back of the net. And I think this is a good moment to talk about the U.S. men's national team meta, because coming into this game, the big concern about the U.S. wasn't their ability to score goals in transition. Like, we know that they can counter ferociously. It's about how do they break down a low block whenever the defense is sitting in. And for the most part in this game, Honduras wasn't playing in a low block. They weren't sitting in. They were coming right at the United States. They were trying to get a 3-point result from this game. But in this moment, in the few moments where Honduras was sitting back, I was curious to see if the U.S. was able to do anything against that low block. And at this moment and a few times in the game, they had some ideas. They found some things that they were able to do. And in this particular moment, the U.S., playing much faster than they did against Canada, was able to work it out wide to Robinson. Robinson finds players in the middle. We then switch it all the way back to find Pulisic in the box, and Pulisic puts in a good shot. Now, one thing about this qualifying window compared to the last qualifying is, in the last qualifying, Christian Pulisic absolutely put on his Superman cape, put the U.S. on his back, and had a ridiculous amount of goals and assists in that window. In this window, we're not seeing those goals and assists from Christian Pulisic. I think that they're going to come, but I think that we've seen that Pulisic has just been trying to do so much and create so much that he's almost, I don't want to say a hindrance, but he's almost slowing things down a little bit for the U.S. But this is a moment where Christian puts a really good shot on goal. Could have been another opportunity for the U.S. to pull ahead, but a good save from the Honduran keeper, who actually had a few quality saves in this game. A few minutes later, in the 57th minute, after making a run at the Honduran back line, Christian Pulisic gets injured and is unable to continue. He'll eventually make way for Christian Roldan. And I got to say, in this moment of the game, myself, like I think a lot of you, was very nervous because our star boy just gets hurt and he gets that pain face. And anytime I see Christian Pulisic grimacing, I immediately go back to Kuva and I'm immediately terrified. But Christian Roldan comes in and puts in a solid performance. He'll actually contribute to a goal later on. As I said before, Christian Pulisic just seemed like he's got the world on his shoulders right now. And to have the U.S. be able to rally around him and get a result despite him not being on the field, hopefully we'll see in the future, in future qualifiers, that load on Christian, both in reality and in his mind, is a little bit lessened, and he's able to be a little bit more himself, and we see those goals come a little bit more freely. Because, in the previous World Cup qualifying cycle, it wasn't Christian Pulisic really doing everything. He had Clint Dempsey on the field. He had Josie Altidore on the field. He had Michael Bradley on the field. Players who were creating and finding Pulisic, and Pulisic was able to finish off those moves. In this qualifying cycle, it seems like Christian feels like he's got to start the move. He's got to be the midfielder that brings it up. He's got to be the midfielder that creates it, and a lot of times be the midfielder that finishes it. And it's just too much for one player to handle. So how we figure that out moving forward, maybe it's getting Gio Reyna involved, maybe it's Musa, maybe it's, I don't know what it's going to be, but figuring out how to get Pulisic to function in a way that's more alike the way that he functions for Chelsea is going to be really important for the U.S. moving forward. At that 63rd minute, we get that Andy Nahar and one mixtape on Brendan Aronson that I alluded to earlier. That leads to a foul. That foul leads to a free kick. The free kick leads to a corner. The corner gets cycled out of the box and eventually put back in, I believe, by Nahar. And that leads to the best Honduran opportunity at goal of the second half. It's a header that's headed low into the outside, heading for the far corner of the goal, but Matt Turner is able to dive down and save it. A great save for Turner. I really believe that was a goal. If maybe Matt Turner's not in the goal, maybe if it's another goalie for the U.S., but we know how good Matt Turner is at stopping shots, and this was evidence of it right here in this moment. In the 86th minute, we start seeing Anthony Robinson really take over the game. He takes on two defenders on the left flank. Eventually, he finds Acosta outside of the box. Acosta tests the keeper from distance and forces a save. This is another moment where we see the U.S. going up against a defensive block from Honduras, and unlike in the Canada game where they just had absolutely no options and ideas, we see a U.S. playing quickly, a U.S. finding players, a U.S. that's actually moving around and making things happen, and it leads to a shot on goal for Acosta. Now, keep that sequence in your memory bank, because not too long after that, about a minute and a half later, after a free kick leaves the U.S. a bit disorganized and players are kind of playing all over the place, Tyler Adams finds himself momentarily in midfield, and he makes a penetrating run from the midfield before dishing wide to Sebastian Lletget. Lletget's in the exact same space that Robinson was a few moments ago. This time he finds Adams at the top of the box instead of Acosta. Adams takes a shot, forcing a save from the keeper. A little bit more dangerous of a shot than Acosta had moments ago. Forces the keeper to dive. Really great effort from Adams. But I think it showed Greg Berhalter and pretty much everybody watching what the difference this team looks like with Adams in the midfield versus at right back. And not too long later, about a minute later, Yedlin comes on for James Sands, and Adams moves central. Now, we spoke about Sands a few times earlier. Sands did not have a great game. It was his first cap with the real senior team, his first World Cup qualifying cap. Difficult moment for him to come in and play in. So this is not like the end of the journey for James Sands, but this was not a game that will get Sands called back in next time if there's an opportunity to get another player in. But anyway, that run from Tyler Adams was one of the first time I saw a midfielder from the U.S. just make a penetrating run and carry the ball upfield at the Honduran back line. I think we saw in the Canada game and maybe even in the El Salvadorian game that one of the things that the U.S. really struggles with is getting the ball from the back, from defense, up to the attack. And one of the things that can help out with that is a ball carrier who can just get on the ball and run at the defense. Tyler Adams decided to do that in this moment and created an opportunity for himself to test the Honduran keeper. Now, in my opinion, whenever Tyler Adams moved centrally, that's whenever everything changed for the U.S. because his presence centrally is just immense. His pressure whenever the opposition gets the ball, his decision-making, his quality on the ball, his passing, just He brought so much to the midfield for the U.S. And while I understand why he started the game at right back, considering DeAndre Yedlin has played a lot of minutes, I would have loved to see Adams get into that midfield a little bit sooner. Maybe 20 minutes was all DeAndre Yedlin had to give, and it had to be like that. I don't know. But it was definitely, you could see a shift in the just the comfort and feel of the U.S. midfield whenever Adams moved into that defensive midfielder position. And in the 74th minute, Honduras attempts to break out, but McKenzie is able to stand up a Honduran forward and take the ball. By the way, Mark McKenzie had a fantastic game. I didn't show all the moments in defense, but there were so many where Mark McKenzie just shut down Honduran attackers. I mean, tremendous defensive game from Mark McKenzie. I'd be very comfortable with him starting a World Cup qualifier in the future. So Mark McKenzie gives the ball to Acosta, who finds an overlapping Robinson. Robinson plays out wide to Aronson at the top of the box. Aronson plays to Leggett in midfield, who finds Yedlin out wide. Yedlin plays the cross into the danger zone, finding Pepi's head. 2-1 USA. The 18-year-old phenom, the Pepi train, the boy from El Paso, gets a goal, comes good, has a huge celebration. You can tell all the players on the field are very excited for Pepi. Very exciting to see a U.S. forward be goal dangerous, not something that we see a ton. Pepi, not just with the goal, but throughout the game. Great hold-up play, great ideas, great moments in possession. One of the best games from a U.S. forward that we've seen since, I don't know, Josie Altidore. Also got to say, this wasn't a moment where the U.S. broke down a low block. This was a moment in transition. This is exactly where the U.S. wants to be. And I think moving forward, if the U.S. can get ahead of teams, we can see these big results because the U.S. is built to counterattack. They're built to absorb pressure and attack. And we saw throughout this game, especially after the 70th minute mark, that whenever Honduras was pressed and forced to come right at us, we were able to just pick them apart, and our counterattack was absolutely lethal. So a great moment from the U.S. here. Really fast, really quick decisions. And let me shout out Sebastian Leggett, because Leggett was involved in, I believe, 3 of these sequences, and he set up some other goal opportunities that didn't come off. Despite coming in at halftime, Sebastian Leggett had a tremendous impact on this game. And, Sebastian Leggett has received a lot of criticism from the U.S. men's national team fan base, and in some cases deservedly so, but I think we saw, at least in this game, that Sebastian Leggett still has a lot to offer this team and can come up big in big moments for this squad. And at a time where, boy, the depth was really tested for the U.S. men's national team, to have a player like Sebastian Leggett who can come on at halftime of a World Cup qualifier away and just not be worried about the moment and just play his game and create for the U.S. Tremendous game from Sebastian Leggett, one of his best games in a while. In the 85th minute, Christian Roldan presses a Honduran defender who misplays a pass. He actually kicks it right at Roldan and bounces in front of the two. Roldan wins the second ball and he plays it into the path of Pepi. Pepi charges at the Honduran keeper before squaring it to Aronson at the top of the box. Aronson finishes over the keeper's shoulder. 3-1 USA. I mean, Ricardo Pepe is having a dream game at this point. His instincts and his ability, not just as a striker, but as an all-around soccer player, absolutely tremendous. I mean, his instincts to see where that ball was going to end up from Roldan, who himself had a tremendous sequence right there. Absolutely tremendous. He gets that ball, he charges, he finds Brendan Aronson. He's able to commit to Honduran defenders and create that space for Aronson. And then Aronson, we've seen this at Salzburg many, many times, where when he's in and around that box, he can be a lethal finisher, and he shows it right here. Puts the ball over the Honduran keeper's shoulder, and it's 3-1. And at this point, boy, the Honduran fans begin the ironic Olé chants. They start, I don't know what they were chanting at the team, but it did not sound very nice at all. We start seeing Honduran fans leaving, and we start seeing the Honduran team give up. And that's huge. I've never seen a U.S. team force an opposition away in their home stadium to give up, at least in Central America in World Cup qualifying. That's not long after, in the 92nd minute, the U.S. get their fourth goal to really just pour it on. Tyler Adams wins a 50-50 in midfield, runs at the Honduran back line. He plays out wide left to Ricardo Pepe, who is just all alone by himself with the Honduran keeper. Pepi tries to pick out the corner. His low far post effort is saved, but the rebound falls right into the path of Sebastian Lletget for 4-1 USA, and that's where we end it. Once again, another moment in transition where Honduras is coming at the U.S. We're able to intercept and go right back at them. That's where we're at our best, man. And I think we saw that in this game. There's still going to be questions moving forward to how the U.S. actually breaks down a low block. If Honduras would have came out like Canada and bunkered and forced us to get a result, maybe it's different. I don't know how that plays out. But Honduras was in a position where they had to come out against us. They had to try to get points at home. And we saw what the U.S. was able to do whenever they did expose themselves in those moments. So we know that the U.S. can pressure and we can get these goals in transition. It's still a question of how we go at defenses in the low block. I think we saw that we did have a few more ideas and we were able to make some things happen. I think the players were confident putting balls in for Pepi to attack in the box, which was exciting to see. It might be that new idea that we've been looking for the U.S. But that being said, still a great win for the U.S. Great to get 4 goals. Great to run away and in this qualifying window with a result that the squad can build on and be proud of. The hot seat that Greg Berhalter was under, at least for this moment in time, he was able to buy himself October, and hopefully October window is going to be much better results. Greg Berhalter is still going to have a segment of the fan base that just never wants him to be there and is always going to be ready to sink their talons in as soon as the team starts slipping up. But I think at least in this moment, I don't think anybody can say that Greg's going to be fired off of this window. So he's got his opportunity to look at the drawing board, see what's not working, and try to come up with new things that are working. I think it should be said that, my goodness, in this window, I mean, Musa wasn't available from the start. Chris Richards wasn't available from the start. But Serginho Dest gets hurt. Christian Pulisic gets hurt. Weston McKennie gets suspended. Zach Steffen ends up with the COVID. And Gio Reyna gets hurt. I mean, my goodness, that is a murderer's row of players that you don't want to be unavailable for the U.S. And they still found a way to go down to San Pedro Sula, classically one of the most difficult places to play, and get that result. I mean, tremendous. Huge goal from Ricardo Pepe. Ricardo Pepe has put himself from a player that made the team because Giassi Zardes came up injured into a player that's arguably the starter, a player that the fan base is going to be screaming to get more minutes as we head into October. Huge game from Anthony Robinson, as I said before, his best game as a defender, his best game for the U.S. men's national team I've ever seen him play. I'm totally comfortable with him at left back right now. I've totally flipped on Anthony Robinson in this window. Tremendous effort from Jedi. Mark McKenzie was tremendous in this game. I believe it was the first time we saw Mark McKenzie in this window. Disappointing because I wish we could see him more. And honestly, there's a question over whether John Brooks is even the guy who starts next to Miles Robinson, because Miles Robinson, alongside Tyler Adams, were the 2 best players of the window. Tremendous efforts from these guys. We knew about Tyler Adams. We knew that he was the most important player on the squad. We saw that over the 3 games, not just because of his stellar play on the field, but because of who he is as a person and the emotional stability that he lends to this team. But Miles Robinson, I mean, to go from a player that came in through the Gold Cup to be arguably the best center back on the U.S. men's national team right now, tremendous. Now, that being said, we got to figure out what's up with John Brooks, whether he can contribute into this window. We didn't get enough from him in this window. But that being said, there's question marks moving forward about John Brooks and about Josh Sargent. We've been saying forever that Josh Sargent needs to solidify himself on the team, have that big breakout game. And I think we saw in a game that Josh Sargent started, another striker comes on and has his own breakout game. And now it looks like Sargent is chasing Pepi, at least for me. I mean, Sargent is still an EPL striker, but boy, how do you sit down the Pepi train right now in place of Sargent, who's just never been goal dangerous? And we see this game from Pepi where he was all over, just had dangerous moment after dangerous moment. The questions about Berhalter are, of course, going to remain. They're always going to remain. I think any coach should be getting questioned at all times by the fan base. However, considering the results, considering the fact that he was able to get 3 points in Honduras, he's at least bought himself a little bit of time. There's still going to be questions about how we play at home. In the next window, we got 2 games at home. Those 2 games are going to be must-wins at home. The first one against Jamaica, and I'm not sure who the other ones are against. But either way, you got to win those games at home. And if our opposition is willing to sit back and bunker, how do we break down that low block? That's going to be the question of the next World Cup qualifying window. And if Berhalter fails to get 3 points in both of those games, the questions are going to come right back, and he's going to be right back on the hot seat. Now, I'm curious what you guys thought about that window. I mean, curious what you thought about that game. How are you feeling right now? Are you relieved? I know that I tweeted out, are you happy or relieved? Because I don't know if I was happy last night. I was just relieved. I was having trouble sleeping after that result against Canada, and I was able to actually get a good night's sleep for the first time this week. So that felt good. Let me know your comments in the comment section. As always, if you speak Spanish, dígame un comentario en español para que pueda practicar mi español. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you haven't yet, please hit that like button. If you haven't yet, please subscribe, join the party so you can be here next time we post. Thank you guys so much for watching. My name is Sam, and this is the Yank Report.